Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. And I hope you enjoy this new show, whether you're viewing it on the internet or listening to a podcast version of the episode. I do want to thank you for being part of my audience. You can also find links to videos or podcasts on MiamiGhostChronicles.com, as well as where you can submit your story about any eerie experiences you've had, which I would love to hear about. Just go to the Submit Your Story tab. Please subscribe to our channel so that you receive notification of when we release a new show. And find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This is where I usually live stream and where I give you a behind-the-scenes look at locations where new episodes are being filmed at. I also tell you about all the interesting guests that will be appearing soon on Stories of the Supernatural. I hope you enjoy the show, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. How are you all doing today? Well, today is a good day for Marlene, and that is because of my guest. This is a lady by the name of Carol Banayos. She is a #1 best-selling author, entrepreneur, creator, life coach, blogger, psychic, and clairvoyant. She is a graduate of the Asper School of Business from the University of Manitoba. She holds degrees in human resources and marketing, psychology, and business management, and she's also certified as a life executive coaching and in NLP. For you, those of you who don't know what that acronym is, it's neuro-linguistic programming. Now, after her third near-death experience, she finally woke the fuck up and was now awakened on a higher level while being consciously aware of the life that she was leading. This realization led to change in the life and career she wanted. She realized that she was conditioned, conforming to the norms of society. Therefore, she quit her secure position attained by working for 7 years in the province to pursue her passion in real estate. This led to her life coaching and the writing of her book, which is titled Wake the Fuck Up. So how are you doing today, Carol?
I'm doing fantastic today. How are you?
Great. Now,
Yes.
Before we get into the book, and I discussed this earlier with you, Carol, I wanted to ask you, what was going on with your life? I'm sure that it wasn't just one incident that led to that effing moment when you woke up.
Well, it happened after my third near-death experience, and I think a lot of people kind of get into certain relationships where their intuition tells them they shouldn't actually go into it in the first initial state. So I kind of ignored my intuition, and I went into a relationship anyways. And in that relationship, I was already, I got out of a previous relationship, and I should have given myself the time to heal, and I didn't give myself time to heal, and I went to another relationship where I knew I wasn't really emotionally available and not right. And so in that process, I began to lose myself, and I felt that I always had to lower my ambitions. And I tried to leave the relationship 2 or 3 times, kind of broke up, got back together, and it got to a point where I felt like I couldn't break up with him. And I thought that at that time, the most rational way to get out of the relationship was to commit suicide.
Okay.
And it was such a vicious cycle because I was so depressed, and then I ate so much, and I got so depressed because I ate so much because what I was trying to do, I was trying to numb my feelings. And then so I was getting into the process like, okay, the only way I can get out of this relationship is that I just need to end my life. So I was thinking of certain ways of, how to do that. And it just so happens 3 months prior to that, a relationship actually ending, I just had a talk with my ex-sister-in-law that time. And I said, I wish he would just cheat on me and leave. And that's actually what happened.
Wow.
So I didn't actually get to that point because, when you get into a relationship, the natural progression is, okay, you're with them for X amount of years. The next step is to kind of get engaged. The next step is to kind of get married. And we're kind of going down to that trajectory. But I knew that it wasn't right. But again, as usually with females or people in general, we kind of keep that, we quiet that voice down instead of really just, hearing it and just taking that risk or standing up for yourself and being, you know what, this fucking relationship is not working. I'm kind of dying inside. I need to
Right.
make that decision and leave. But instead, I kind of was like, I pussied out, and I just went along with what I thought I should naturally be doing. And after that whole relationship ended, I finally woke the fuck up because I realized I was living my life in a lie. I did a lot of things based on how I thought society, my parents, and everybody thought I should be living. And so
Right.
after that happened, I kind of went, I went intensely into kind of personal development, and I made myself an object of study because I think a lot of the time when people don't really know what they want in life or what they want to pursue is because they don't really get a chance to get to know them. People even kind of shy away from even wanting to spend 2 minutes by themselves
Oh, sure.
because I guess, you know, to actually really like look into the depths of your own being, people will get kind of scared of that because you don't know what things are going to surface. So I had to make sure before I even entered in any relationship or any kind of venture that I start to get to know me better. And then so
Yes.
that kind of led to the path of like, you know, me kind of quitting my 7-year career in human resources. And I went through all that education to kind of get that position in the government. But then I looked at it and I'm like, I'm not this title. I'm not this profession. I'm not that person. I'm kind of a spiritual being having a human experience on this earth. And, you know, I grow and develop based on my own experiences. And, you know, I don't need that status or recognition. So I looked at it and I'm like, holy shit, I just got into this job because I thought that this was going to give me the success I needed. This was going to give me
Right.
the happiness I needed. But it was still that kind of that emptiness, that void. So I just decided to quit and I went, decided to kind of pursue my passion. And then when you're working in a secure position in the government,
Oh, yeah.
and, you know, everybody's like, you're fucking crazy. You work so hard, you have a secure position, you are gonna have a pension. But I didn't care about that because I just thought like there's always a cap to your potential. There's always a cap to your earning possibilities, and I don't want any cap at all on myself. So I needed to kind of venture out and do something that resonated with me where I'm gonna have no restrictions.
Exactly,
So
because it almost sounds like your journey from death was not only a physical
yeah.
thing with your near death, it was almost like a journey from, I want to say, spiritual death in the sense, not that you died spiritually, but like you were reborn to coming to grips with what you really wanted. And putting the fear, like you said, you were thinking like what everybody was telling you, secure a job, you had
Hmm.
invested all this time and money in getting an education to go for that job and
Yeah.
the big S word, security.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that, and the reason why I bring that up is there's a lot of people that find themselves in that situation. And don't get me wrong, I understand the part about the responsibility part. Absolutely. But it sounds like you also did a lot of soul searching before you made decisions.
Yeah.
In other words, you did what you just described a lot of people are scared of doing, which is having that alone, quiet moment and looking inside.
Yeah, and that's a very scary thing to do because it's almost like, again, like even another thing that I want to point out, even though you are going to look inside and there's a lot of things that kind of, you know, bubble up that's very negative and very, you know, scary, you have to even recognize that that may not even be a collection of you. It's a collective consciousness or what society, all those kind of, you know, negative input that you receive. So basically that's your ego, or that's kind of what has been ingrained, as we talked earlier, into our subconscious of what we should look like, how we should feel, you know, who to date, you know what I mean, what career that we need.
Sure.
And then, you know, this, a lot of friction happens inside because I think essentially when you are wanting to become a better version of yourself, there's going to be that inner battle. The you that wants to rise and the you or ego that wants to continually pull you down. So you have to find a way to develop that muscle, and you only can do that in your alone time so that your inner voice becomes louder than the outer voice and you're able to kind of like block out all that noise. And
Right.
I think just like how with people look as success, people think it's like an overnight thing, but people don't actually look kind of behind the curtain to be like, okay, that individual actually spent like 10, 15 years working diligently on themselves to get to that point, right? So
Yes.
I think we need to be able to lift the veil on a lot of the shit. And it's like, we are a work in progress. This
Hmm.
strength or muscle, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice, you know?
Yes. And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of
Yeah.
people don't realize exactly like what you said.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong to put down talent. Some people have talents, but believe it or not, what wins the day is the perseverance or the practice.
Yeah.
People that want something, that practice, that go back and do it and put in the time. A lot of times when you look at people that are really successful in whatever field it is that they're in, whether it's the arts or mechanical, technical, whatever, the
Mm-hmm.
sciences, yeah, everybody always thinks of the genius, like an Einstein, and that's the outlier. That's very seldom. The
Yeah.
everyday people, it's usually the ones that do exactly what you said, that practice and do it again and again, and they have success. And a lot of people, like you said, that are on the outside looking in, they fail to realize that this person might have sacrificed or done a lot to get there, or that they are in tune with what they really truly want, what makes them
Yes.
happy, not everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the things I've heard that they say, if you ever really want to know if you're passionate about something, is that if what
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to do, if you would never become famous, if nobody would ever know anything about it, if you would never receive recognition or nothing, would you still do it? And
Mm-hmm.
they say that's one of the ways you measure if you're really truly passionate about what it is that you do.
Yeah.
Okay, which by the way, later on we'll go into it. A lot of people also don't realize that sometimes as you go along in life, you transition. Because there's
Yes.
people that, I'm going to give you a perfect example, that when they were young, they went and they became doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And then in middle age, 40s, 50s, they realize that's not really what makes them happy anymore. Like they're like, but how can I not? People also change as they go along in life. Not that it doesn't matter to them, but we all go through stages. Now, let me ask you, when you had those near death experiences, did
Mm-hmm.
you have, the near death experiences that everybody's heard of, the tunnel? What happened with you?
Well, essentially, most of my near-death experiences are like, I mean, near-death experiences are either ones that people who have died or come back, or
Hmm.
near-death experiences are those who've actually experienced a lot of trauma and been able to kind of
Yes.
come out of that on the other side. And I
Yes.
think a lot of the time when I was going through those whole three different near-death experiences, I was actually already dead already. So I
Right.
didn't really kind of connect what was really happening to me. It was only after the fact that I noticed that, like, when my first near death experience, I kind of like, that's kind of like nothing. I
Right.
got into this car accident, and the way that we were hit from the back, they had to take us out with the jaws of life, right?
Oh,
So it's
wow.
almost like you look at that, and I actually didn't even tell my family anything like that happened. I just started my job in the government, and I had to go to this career fair in Brandon. We were stopped at a stoplight, and this van was going like 60 miles an hour, and he like hit us right from the back, pushed us right through the intersection, and then it just happened all fast, and I wasn't even wearing a seatbelt. I
Oh.
was sitting in the back, right? And so we get pulled out of the car. We put on like these wood stretchers, and we
Hmm.
brought to the hospital, and all that stuff happened, but I didn't even think anything of it. Like, and then I just went on. And since I started my new job, I went to work the next day. And they're like, what the hell are you doing at work? You just got into an accident. But it was kind of like, that people pleasing thing is like, I
Yes.
just started, so I have to go because I don't want to look less than,
Right.
right? And
Uh-huh.
so, and then after that, like, I went to the Philippines. The next one was when I got stung by a box, a jellyfish. So
Oh
you
my
catch,
God.
so I was we're at the other side of the island, and then I was like carrying my like portable DVD player. So we're walking in the water, and all of a sudden I was walking, I'm like, fuck! It was like it was the most excruciating pain ever. So I ran
Yes.
out to the shore, like on the beach there, and then I had all these tentacles, clear tentacles, like wrapped around my arms and my legs, and it was most painful. Like how I can like compare it to is someone were to pour burning oil over your body.
Yes. I've
Yes,
been
and I
stung by a jellyfish very lightly along, and it wasn't a box jellyfish, so I kind kind of get it. Yes,
Yeah. So over
it's like all your
my arm.
nerves are,
Yeah. And so essentially from that is like, I didn't know that, from a sting from that kind of box type of jellyfish, there's like a lot of reported deaths because it can,
oh my,
stop your heart and everything like that. And I got it all over my body, like both my legs. And I was actually swollen, like, from here all the way down to like my feet. And the thing is, since I was on an island on the Philippines, the trip to go to the hospital was like 10 hours. So I
oh
didn't end up going
crap.
to the hospital. So I was just like swollen. I just like no one peed on me because basically people are like, oh, when you get like stung,
Yeah.
someone should pee on you or do whatever. None of that happened. But I was like rocking back and forth on the shore for like I don't know a couple hours until the pain subside. But you know what? Again, I didn't even fucking care. I went back in the water. You know what I mean? So
My
yeah.
God.
So yeah, and then the third one, just what I tell you, when I was close to committing suicide.
Right.
So I guess when you're in that state and you are not awakened, you're just like numb and you kind of just let life pass you by. And in those separate instances, I never really cherished that I had a second or third chance or
Right.
a first or second chance. I just kind of went through with life. But after the fact, that's where I had more time to reflect and been like, holy, I feel very lucky and blessed that I'm still here. And it's because I'm still here is because I have this purpose that I have to fulfill. It's not my time yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked you that is that I know a lot of, sometimes a lot of the people that recount their near-death experiences, they kind of come back with this understanding of what's really important.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, a lot of the stuff that
Yeah.
distracts us or that society says is going to make you happy, all of a sudden that stuff stops being important because you have that moment of, wait a minute, it's my life, and in other words, I'm wasting it. Or I've heard also that some people think, oh, when I get the car, when I get the house, when I get the boyfriend or the girlfriend, that's when I'll be happy and when things will
Yeah.
be real, in other words.
Yeah. Well, after, like I said, after that that third near-death experience, that's when I really actually realized how much of a fucking shitstorm I was in. Then I needed to kind of take myself out of it. I needed to like wake the fuck up. And when that like breakup happened, like I felt this like this heavy weight just totally like lifted off my
Yeah.
shoulders, and like now I can be who I was always destined to be. I can do
Right.
what I want, you know what I mean, without like being scolded or feeling selfish or whatever. Just really explore myself and get to know myself again, and
Right.
I think when you get lost in a relationship, what I think a lot of people do, like they don't know who they are. They think that they're that relationship.
Yes.
They're not a separate entity who has these goals and passions and all these different things, and people get lost in that. And I wanted to make sure I never get back into that same state again, so I made sure I made myself the object of study. Yeah, and I think another important thing what I do mention in my book is one of my favorite quotes, and it's by Norman Cousin, and it says that death is not the most tragic thing that happens in life. The most tragic thing in life that happens is what dies in us while we live.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
it's so powerful, because I think a lot of the times, we don't take a step back to reflect that, like, what has died in me, that joy and passion is not there anymore. So, if it's not there, let me take a moment to look at what's causing that unhappiness and what can I do to bring back that joy, that love,
Well, you know what? And we were talking about this earlier, Carol, where everybody makes mistakes. And by the way, I think we make mistakes until we're 6 feet under the ground. Yeah,
Oh,
we
yes.
make less mistakes as we get old,
And in
hopefully.
our next life too.
We're like, but people somehow or other don't know how to forgive themselves and move on. In other words, accept everybody makes mistakes, some worse than others, and you take responsibility from it. You hopefully learn from it, but you don't keep whipping yourself over it forever and ever. Okay,
Yeah.
and learn not to trust yourself. And that sounds like what happened with you. You came to the point and you said, okay, I made this big mess of this certain areas of my life, but that's it. I'm done with that.
Yeah.
I'm ready to move on, and I'm going to go in the direction of what makes my heart happy, and that's it. And a lot of people sometimes have that fear because they're always scared. What if I make another mistake? What if, okay, but maybe not.
But I guess what I would respond to in that is I think when people start to understand that in life there's always going to be pain and struggle. So
Sure.
when you already know that and accept it, then it comes with a package. But then also not to look at pain and struggle as something as a negative thing. You should look at pain and struggle, okay, this is going to build my character, this is going to make me stronger, and I can use that as a reference point to help me get through other kind of, adversity in my life. So I think even that perspective of how people look at it is like, this is going to make me a better me. So I welcome that stuff,
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And you're absolutely right, because what happens is that when a situation, whatever it is, it could be
Hmm.
anything, sometimes it's minor, sometimes it's major. Once you face it and you overcome it or handle it, for better or
Yeah.
worse, you handle it, you almost develop like this belief in yourself. Well, which is, wow, I handled it. I took care of it. I addressed it. Whatever. Maybe it was
Yeah.
the right thing. Maybe it was the wrong one, but I did it. A lot of people step back and they don't want to engage, like you said, in
Hmm.
difficult situations. And you can't escape them. If you've got a pulse, you
Yeah.
know, you can't escape that you're going to have moments when you're thinking, oh, I hate this, or worse, of course. But you're absolutely right. It builds character. It builds belief in yourself, and what something that we were discussing earlier, that all the answers, you do have them inside of you.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, and a lot of people have a hard time because, and I hate to say this, but society and our culture a lot of times points to outside of ourselves for
Yeah,
answers. You're going to get the solution outside of yourself,
exactly.
and that's not the case.
That's not the
It's
case at all.
But let's face it, if you have a hard time believing in yourself as being a good source of information, somebody tells you, "Hey, you know the right way to handle this," you're going to go, "No, I don't." Because
Yeah.
you're
Well,
scared. You don't believe in yourself.
we always second guess ourselves, and I think that it's coming back to that self forgiveness, right? We have to
Hmm.
kind of forgive ourselves for being so mean to ourselves. Like it's crazy
Yes.
because the kind of conversations that I used to have about myself and say things to myself about like you're ugly, you're stupid, you're not good
Right.
enough, like you know what I mean? You'll never make it. And it's almost like, okay, take a step back. What if you were to say that to your best friend or anybody? You
Exactly.
would have no fucking friends at all. So it's almost like, start practicing like self-love and I think it's always tied into that not being good enough. And the thing
Right.
is,
And it's
you
that
are good
inner
enough.
dialogue, exactly like
Yeah.
what you're talking about. That a lot of times, if you actually listen to your inner dialogue of how we talk to
Yeah.
ourselves, forget a friend. You wouldn't even talk to a stranger that way. And
Exactly.
we do that on a continuous basis, and basically we're feeding, that belief, we're cementing it, as far as exactly like what you said, when you call yourself stupid, when you call yourself this, or how could you do that, and um yeah, it's not, that doesn't help. In other words, it doesn't.
It does.
Contrary to what people think, that by berating themselves they're building their themselves, and it's, whether they got it from authority figures at school or at home. And unfortunately, I want to say not all the time, but sometimes society makes us think that by criticizing, let's say, our children, we're making them better,
Mhm.
and then we keep on doing that in our head because that's been instilled in us.
And that criticizing you're handicapping your kid.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Because you're
Yes.
building like a lot of oh, you know what I mean, blockages in them already. You know what I mean? Like in this
Yes.
persona, or you know what I mean? I need to be like this, and that. And it's almost, I mean, constructive criticism is good.
Exactly. It's how you
But
deliver it, though.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's all, I agree. It's all in delivery, but it can't be like, again, saying you're stupid. You should be like, your older sister, or you should be like,
Oh, yeah,
that kid Jake at
exactly.
school. He is like, wins all the games, or he is,
Hmm.
A plus. And like, you know what? I don't really care about grades. You know what I mean? That's just, it's not a good representation or even of someone's skills and abilities because it's just not.
No, no, it's not.
Mhm.
And by this, don't get me wrong, because I know a lot of people out there. By this, I'm not a big believer in giving everybody a trophy, and I'm going to
Mhm.
explain why. I think, like, let's use the sports thing with a kid.
Mhm.
Hey, if you're not good at that and you really like it, you're going to have to practice it at it.
Abs-
You understand what I'm saying? You have to. that's where kind of the tough love comes in, where yeah, you might not hit the ball as good as this kid or be a catcher, then practice.
Yeah.
You got to practice it. You got to do it over and over. Some people are a little bit more adept than others, but you got to practice, because sometimes it's almost like we were talking about. It's like a life lesson that, you talk to some people, let's say about something. Oh, did you ever try that? Yeah, but I wasn't good at it.
Hmm.
Oh, what do you mean? Oh, I tried a couple of times and I just wasn't good at it. And I was like, a couple of times? That's it? That's how quick you realize you weren't good at it? Did you ever try to do it over and over and get better, practice it?
Hmm.
And the reason why I say this is, for example, I studied piano throughout my childhood into my teenage years.
Yeah.
And, as you go further, like in all things, whether it's sports or something like that, the more advanced you become, the more practice and more time you need to spend at it. And, my teacher would always tell me, you didn't practice enough. She could tell right away. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that holds true. Talent will only take you so far. And I think sometimes that we have to remember that if you really want something bad enough, you're going to
Yeah.
have to work at it.
It is
Um,
like deliberative practice, because I think you mentioned something earlier. You said outlier, so you
yeah.
may have read Malcolm
Yes, I
Gladwell's book.
have. I have.
Yes. So, the 10,000 hours,
Hmm.
if you spend in
Absolutely.
a particular profession, you can just, you self-master it, right? But
Right.
I always believe in, there's quickest point from point A to B. And is that when you have like a coach or mentor, you know what I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
to get you there, right? That coaching and the accountability,
Absolutely.
and someone, if you look at someone like, okay, that is actually a role model of where I tend to be. So let me kind of pick their brain or ask if they can be my mentor so I can get there. And it can happen
Right.
faster, right? And I think
Absolutely.
with anything in life, it's deliberate practice, but the key is consistency. You can't just do
Yes.
it one day. Oh, I'm going to do it like, Tuesday, Thursday, and then I'm good. I'm like a star. No, it's every single day. You schedule it in. But it takes a lot of practice.
Right.
And it takes a
Or
lot of
like if you
discipline.
do something a
Discipline,
couple of
discipline.
times and you suck at
Yeah.
it, it's like, of course. What do you
Yeah.
think? And you said it earlier, sometimes people on the outside, they're, whether they're a virtuoso or they're really intelligent or they've got a talent, that you're seeing maybe the end result of a lot of hours
Hmm.
or time spent in working at it.
Hmm.
And let me tell you something, even most experts will tell you there's never a point when you're really done. There's
No.
always a there's always a momentum, and that's also a good way to tell if you're onto your passion, which is, yeah, there's going to be days when you're like tired and like, oh, I don't want to do
Yeah.
this. But most of the time you want to do this. You're happy to do this.
Yeah.
It does something for you. So, I mean, there's a lot of, and I understand exactly what you mean by a mentor or somebody that coaches you, because this is the person that, when you start like going off a little bit on your,
On a
that kind of
tangent.
pushes you back, like, or sometimes that, we kind of like do this narrow type of rigid thinking,
Hmm.
and they're the person that says, okay, well, have you considered this or that? And then it's kind of like shakes you up a little bit to look at alternatives to whatever
Yeah.
it might be,
Yeah.
or to pull back and say, man, cut yourself some slack. You're being a little bit too hard on yourself also.
Yeah. Because the important thing is for people to recognize too is that, the same mind that created the problem cannot be the same mind that solves it. So you need
Exactly.
that kind of outer perspective, not unless you're able to change states, like if you're really frazzled and able to calm yourself down through like breathing or meditation, and then kind of look at the situation, be like, okay, I can have a firm grip on it. But sometimes it's always good to, ask for help. And I think that's another thing too. People will be like, I can go on it on my own, but there's no harm in asking for help. If I'm
Absolutely
kind of
not.
stuck on
Absolutely
something,
not.
or you know what I mean, I'm feeling down on something, I'm not afraid to reach out, because another person's perspective can shed some light,
Sure.
rather than sitting in the dark, in this turmoil and like, again, going through the suffering cycle,
Right, exactly. And you know what? That's how a lot of how group therapy works, for example. Whatever, or counseling groups or whatever. Because sometimes people seem to lock themselves into this belief that they are the only ones that are going through this, or they
Hmm.
feel isolated. And I
Yeah.
mean, yes, usually there's maybe somebody overseeing the group, but sometimes when you hear other people that have had similar experiences and how they handle it, or they give
Hmm.
you feedback, it makes you feel better. I hate to say it, you feel better. In other
Yeah.
words, that it becomes bearable. And if let's say if it's not a group thing, if you have what, let's use the word coach. Let's not go
Yeah.
into anything having to do, let's say per se, with mental health. That you have a coach, and we were talking about this as I think as long as you know that this person's there to help you, to coach you, but not to tell you every step of the way,
Hmm.
which is a lot of people sometimes, like we were talking about, they're afraid of making mistakes again. They don't have that much trust in their judgment. So
Hmm.
they kind of start looking at this other person like, okay, tell me, is this okay? Is that right? And it's like, but that's not really what they're supposed to do. And you're a coach, right? Have you run across that sometimes with clients where it's too much hand holding and you have to like say, fly, little bird, fly?
Well, I think it's a progressive, you know what I mean? Because I think essentially they need that kind of hand holding in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, but you have to, let them make their own mistakes. And there's nothing wrong
Yes.
with mistakes. That's when you learn. So you kind of you hold the reins a little bit, and then slowly, progressively, you see them grow and transform. And essentially, if you are like intuitive, you kind of already know what they need, and if they have a certain goal and trajectory, you know how to aligned with the advice of where they're going, you know?
Right.
And no
Exactly.
client or no person is the same as their own customizable path. But I think essentially they need, I think most of the time it's mindset, because a lot of people
Yes.
feel like, okay, I need help in, say, marketing, or I need help in, like, some other aspect of their business. But basically, it's all about shifting that perspective. And I think that's the most important, the mindset. That's mostly the majority of the time that we work with. Well, I work with me and my business partner and clients is the mindset.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this earlier as well, which we are very resistant to
Hmm.
change. Despite
Yeah.
logically saying, I need to change, I think change is better, or this isn't working anymore, when you start thinking of what it's going to take to get to what you're thinking, your subconscious
Hmm.
mind, which is very resistant to change, will sabotage a lot of times our efforts in the sneakiest ways, by the way,
Yeah.
to
Because I
keep you
think
where you're at.
yeah, I know like change is the only constant, but I think, people are welcome to change. They just don't want to be changed.
Right.
I think when it's imposed on someone, like I don't like things being imposed on me. So if I'm
Hmm.
trying to impose on someone else, they're going to resist it. So it's almost like you want to change. How do you intend on doing that? Or how can I help facilitate that change and growth? So
Right.
there's different approaches to it. It's like you gotta fucking change because your life is shit, right?
Right.
What I mean? Okay,
Exactly.
fine. How do I do that? But like, oh, whoa, whoa, you're a bit too much. So instead, it's like, okay, let's kind of try to flip the script on a lot of things that are happening. How do
Right.
you foresee this happening that's beneficial to you? Instead of being like so pushy. Yeah.
Right. And now I'm going to go into because I know you're a psychic and a clairvoyant, and I'm going to, let's go, let's put a foot in that camp.
Okay.
And the reason why I say this is, here we're talking about change.
Hmm.
And I've had clients who, like you said, they're resistant to change. They want to. And then I start going, okay, let's work this also on a metaphysical level.
Hmm.
Let's tell the universe that you're ready to change. I want you to go home and change your bedroom furniture around or your living room furniture. I don't care. Whatever makes you happy. I want you to
Yeah.
switch things out. I want you to change that little bit. And this is especially for the ones that are hanging on tight, like, no, I don't want to change. No, like they want everything like, and I tell them, let's start with that. Because sometimes
Yeah.
it's like what you were saying, the baby steps, because and this is where we get into the metaphysical psychic approach that, in other words, to manifest also what it is that you want to bring about.
Hmm.
How do you work as far as with the psychic part of what you do, Carol?
Well, I think it's kind of that state of being open, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think you can ask for certain things and the universe will bring it to you.
Right.
However, you have to act upon it. You can't just be
Yes.
like, oh, I want this, you know what I mean, this job or whatever to fall on my lap. But
Mm-hmm.
meanwhile, you haven't put out a resume. You're not fucking looking. So
Right.
it's kind of part and parcel. It has to be aligned with action and belief. And I think what people fail to understand that we are all divinely guided in our
Yes.
own path in life. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, with being a psychic and clairvoyant, I was one of my mentors at the time. I said, I want to be spiritually advanced. And he said, the only way you can be spiritually advanced, you shouldn't read books, you shouldn't do any of that stuff, but you need to do psychic readings. And I was like, yeah, right, me do psychic readings. Come on, that's
Okay.
a bunch of bullshit or horse manure or whatever you
Yeah.
said.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I never knew I had those capabilities, right? So it just
Okay.
so happened I did my first psychic reading, and I didn't know what what it was, or a psychic who doesn't read or has no background in that. But things unfolded naturally. I knew how to see people's auras when I was in that state, read past lives, you know
Okay.
what I mean? Be able to them to ask questions, and I see the interpretation of images and everything like that, which I have to kind of convey in a way that they can understand, right? But
Yes.
the reason why I bring that up is that I was wanting to be spiritually advanced, but I already was. It's just that moment of being like I was already. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think when people come from the point of being like, if they want certain things in their life, source and spirit will give it to you. You have to just be in that abundant state. You know what I
Yes.
mean? What can you do in that day to feel abundant or have gratitude for? Be grateful that you have a roof over your head. You can take a hot shower. You have food in the fridge, and we deal with all these. We talked about earlier these first
Yes.
world problems. You know what I mean? It pales into comparison when you actually see someone else from across the world has nothing,
Right.
but they're even more joyful than we are. So how does that make
Right.
sense? It doesn't make sense at all. So it's almost to start to attract things that you want in life, you really have to be grateful for where you are. And then if you want other things, it's like attracts like. So if you want a certain
Absolutely.
person in life, embody those characteristics, and you start to become a magnet, and things will unfold for you.
Right. And you're absolutely right that sometimes, and I'm going to put this one on society. When I say society, as in
Yeah.
the society you live in, I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we get bombarded with all
Mm-hmm.
these messages that you need this to be happy, you need that to be happy. If you don't have this or that, or you don't live in this house, or you can't be happy. There's a lot of advertising, marketing companies out there that make a lot of money by
Mm-hmm.
pitching it a certain way. And
Mm-hmm.
people believe it. God knows we take in a lot of, either through television or through other messaging, we take it in and
Mm-hmm.
we start to believe it. And the truth is that there's a lot of people with a lot of money and a lot of stuff that are very unhappy. And there's
Yes.
people, like you said, that as long as you've got your basic stuff, they're very happy.
Yeah, because I think there has to be an integration of personal development and spiritual
Yes.
development. Because I think a lot of the time, a lot of people go just on one route of personal development. But I find I went through that same route myself. I just focus so on personal development, mind mastery, self mastery, and all the other stuff. But I still felt this void. And it wasn't until I really understood, okay, I am this spiritual aspect and I'm this humanistic aspect. So once I was able to integrate that together, I felt whole, right? And I started looking at things differently. And I think, when people don't really know who they are, they're made in the image and likeness of, a higher power. So when they
Yes.
already know that, then it's almost like, you're an infinite being. You don't really need to connect yourself with all the material things. And
Right.
it goes back to what we talked about earlier about waking the fuck up, which I describe as the moment you realize that you were asleep. And that goes back to knowing yourself, going into yourself, making yourself making yourself a point of study. And I think when you know yourself that fully and know that you're spiritual and a physical being, then most of those things are going to not really matter. But however, I'm not saying that material gain is bad.
No.
I'm not saying that at all. I think, to be abundant, and I think that's another topic
Sure.
of discussion. I think to be spiritual is to be poor. I think that's fucking.
Oh, no. 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 No.
No, I think Yeah. Because I think if you are spiritual, it's just you have to be abundant in all aspects of your life, right? So, yeah.
Well, but and it's true. I absolutely I think that. Let me tell you, I have no guilt whatsoever that
Hmm.
luckily I live under circumstances like you said, where I
Hmm.
have shelter, good not only food, good food to eat,
Yeah.
safe, all those things. Absolutely, I don't take it for granted, but you know, and I think that the human spirit always needs something to strive for.
Yes.
However, my thing is where the belief comes in that if you don't have certain things or live a certain life, then you cannot. How could you be happy? You understand?
Mhm.
Where all of a sudden all your effort is aimed at that acquisition or whatever it is that you believe. And how I've learned of a lot of people that come to that point and they're like, I'm here, I got it, I reached the peak of Everest, whatever. And it's not like, okay, this is it. What happened? I'm supposed to be now jumping for joy. And it's like,
Because
that's
it's such
not there.
it's such an empty thing because
Yes,
when you tie your identity with a material thing, it's
exactly.
very like formless. It lacks substance, so you're going to be
Exactly.
continually trying to feed yourself with more material things, more material things, and it's just no wonder why those famous celebrities commit suicide because
Yes.
they're not able to uh, either look within, express with repress, because if you're not able to express with repress, how can you start to begin to heal,
Right.
you
And
know?
I also think, and I'm sure you've come across it, that
Mhm.
like in all things, you need to have, whether you want to call it harmony, balance
Yeah.
in your life, as in all extremes in anything are bad.
Hmm.
If I know you have a background in psychology. Anybody that's done mental health, whenever you start going into any type of extreme in human behavior, you're in trouble. I don't
Hmm.
care what it is,
Yeah.
whether it's not doing or doing too much, or think you're in hot water when you go start
Hmm.
going into extremes. So I think the happiest human beings, which is by the end, as far as I'm concerned, that's really what we all
Yeah.
want. It's just to be happy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Is when you have that balance, that harmony within different parts of your life. Whether it's like you said, I'm striving to acquire maybe certain position or certain material things for myself or my family, but I also have integrated a spiritual belief or system or whatever you want into my life, so that there's a part of me which
Yeah.
is beyond the material stuff, the stuff that we need to live. I mean, we're made of different things. I think that once we kind of juggle everything more or less, that it's
Hmm.
even, is when we have the best chance of being happy. Because
Yeah.
when you ignore that part of your life as human beings and just concentrate on one, and by this, for example, let's go the opposite direction. The
Hmm.
people that want to be a hermit in the mountain, and because they're going to be enlightened and they're starving. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I personally don't think that's the way you're going to get enlightened.
Hmm.
I think that you get enlightened by engaging in life where you're at right now, whatever it is,
Yeah.
your situation, engaging with it, and like you said, dealing with the ups and the downs
Yeah.
the best way you can, and on a day-to-day basis. Which, by the way, and I don't know if you've come across this, where sometimes we, with this multitasking thing that we got going on, sometimes that people get too much into the multitasking, and it's like, do everything within 24 hours, and then like when tomorrow comes around, you do that.
Hmm.
And I think also because in our modern world with so much technology, where everybody's supposed to have instant access to you, like I say to people, once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away,
Yeah.
you maybe had a phone, and this was even before they had answering machines,
Hmm.
and you called somebody and you didn't expect Insta person. And I
Yeah.
think that puts a lot of pressure sometimes on us as human beings, that we have to be available all the time, or on, I guess is my all the time.
Yeah. But I
Um,
guess it again, the ability to say no. and the
Yes.
ability to know that you have choices, right?
Yes.
So again, instead of being like, if you're strong within yourself and you know what works for you and what doesn't, just say no. I don't have to be on Facebook all the time. I don't need to be on
Yes.
Instagram and everything. And that's the funny thing is, it's like, if I didn't write this book, actually wouldn't be on any social media platforms.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost
Right.
like you know that you have like a purpose and you want to do something to raise human consciousness,
Right.
which will intentionally, like, help this world and make it a better place. Then you have to kind of step out of that sideline and step into the spotlight, even though you don't want to, but it's for the greater purpose, right?
Right.
So I know
Exactly.
I put myself in, that kind of predicament, but I know it's for the greater good,
But you
right?
understand. But see, you have a good understanding
Yeah.
of what's going on as to
Yes.
why you do that. And you made a very good point. There's people out there that are continuously, and I mean continuously, glued to social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And like, what happened to the face-to-face stuff?
Yeah, and that's funny you mentioned that because I was having a conversation yesterday about how social media isn't really social,
No,
right?
it's not. It's not. You're
It's not.
absolutely right.
Yeah, and so that's why I created like the Wake the Fuck Up movement.
Okay.
So I meet with members. Well, I don't like to call them members. I like to call them the Wake the Fuck Up family members because they're like family because it's you attract all these different individuals. So basically, what that movement is for is to help people wake the fuck up, but then
Okay.
most importantly, to provide a platform for people to be able to kind of be heard and to be able
Okay.
to express themselves so they can go through their own transformation. So I have like topics and everything like that every week, and I
Oh,
get the
perfect.
members involved and I let them teach because it's not about me at all. It's about like the whole, movement and to be able to give people a voice and let people learn from one another. Because I think when we
Oh,
start to learn, we realize that we don't there's so much more that we need to learn, and we shouldn't just always want to take the spotlight. It's almost like I can teach but I can learn too. So,
sure.
and I think it's very important because a lot of people that come there, it's like, when I hear feedback, it's like I feel like this is home, or this, I love coming here. It kind of
Hmm.
lifts my vibration every week. That's the human connection that's really lacking.
Yes.
Communication is a lost art. Everybody interacts with these like social platforms, but again, there's that element of missing element of human connection, and then that's where we can really flourish. So it's almost like take time to put away that social stuff and connect with someone, go out for
Yes.
coffee and have a face-to-face communication, and that's
Hmm.
what we continue to do, because I think the more and more people use social media, the more and more they can hide behind it
Oh,
and
sure.
kind of just put out this facade that like I'm this being, but really at the back, and like I'm hurting, I'm lonely, I actually have no one to talk to. So instead of
Exactly.
going, feeling like that, just get outside and join a meetup, or just don't
Yeah,
be
join a
alone.
meetup.
Yeah,
And,
just
and
something.
I think that also part of it, and I hate to say it,
Yeah.
even though, you hear a lot of about cyberbullying and God, horrible stories having to do with social media,
Mhm.
but I think also some people, and let's face it, I don't think we all have some level of insecurity. We
Yeah.
all do.
Oh
And a
yeah.
lot of people, they fear rejection, or they they almost think that that face-to-face meeting, they start going through this thing in their mind. What if the person doesn't like me? What if they think I'm dumb? What if they think I'm stupid? So I won't
Who
go.
fucking cares?
Right, but they have such a hard time getting to that and
But
realizing, guess what? There's going to be a lot of people that might not like you, and vice
yeah,
versa. And that's
yeah.
okay. The world will keep on spinning.
Yeah. But I guess the one thing, like for people who are listening right now that are scared of, that human interaction, or scared of what
Hmm.
people think, the only way to break through something is to go through it.
Yes.
I've been through a lot of those kind of scenarios myself. Like I get into a situation, I'm like, I don't like that way that makes me feel. Like I feel like,
Right.
insecure. I feel like, a high school kid again. You know what I mean?
Right.
But in order for myself to kind of break through that, I made myself go through it continuously to be like, you know what, this doesn't faze me anymore. And so in order to, yeah, just go through it and break through it, and then use that as a starting point and keep on building that muscle.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. And
just need to take that first step.
I'm going to give my own real life example.
Yeah.
When I was in my early 30s, this was after my divorce, I decided to get into distance cycling. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And these are the ones that most of the times they they use some charity, the proceeds, whatever. And I was intimidated. I have been wanting to do it, but I always looked at these people, with the ultra sleek, lightweight bikes and the
Yeah.
helmets, the wind, they're like all like with their cleats. And I had a friend of mine that worked with me. She goes, "Oh, come on, let's do it. As a matter of fact, we used to call her bike Pee Wee's bike because it was like a 3-speed from Sears with a bunch of crap on it.
Yeah.
And she said, "Don't worry, let's do it. Just come with me." And I did it with her just because, of course, that was with my friend. But anyway, the moral of the story is I was under always that fear. Oh, they're going to look at me, all these athletes, and when you get there, you realize nobody cares. Yes,
Yeah, nobody cares because
nobody
everybody's
cares.
thinking the same shit you are.
And
They're
I had a
thinking
great
like, oh,
time. Hey, I wasn't out there
Yeah.
to get,
Yeah.
on a time. I was more for the endurance, as far as that I actually crossed several hours later, at the end of it. And it was fun. And I realized, yes, as a matter of fact, a lot of those guys were really, really nice
Mm-hmm.
and everything. And it was great. And I had a good time and nobody was looking at me and it didn't matter. It didn't
Yeah.
matter. But before that, I had thought, oh my God, I'm going to look so stupid on my regular old mountain bike and these guys with these $1,000 bikes,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to say guys, but the majority of them were guys. You had some women thrown in there, but the majority of these, that they, 30 minutes later, they were at the finish.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, I learned all the rules and I enjoyed it. I did it for many, many years, going even in, my endurance went up, I even did a 150-mile 2-day bike ride. But what I'm saying is that if I would have let that fear of judgment and what are they thinking, I would never have done it, and I would have done myself a big disservice because it was
Yeah.
something I really enjoyed. I still enjoy it, not as much as I should, but it was great. And I realized exactly what you said. There's no spotlight, no Hollywood spotlight coming out from the sky going, look at
Yeah.
her, look what she's doing. Nobody cares.
Yeah,
Everybody's into their own thing.
Yeah, because I think too, like we constantly play these stories in our mind.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think, talking to this fella, and he says, assumptions is a motherfuckers of all screw ups.
Yes.
So we assume that they're thinking of us this way, that way,
Yes.
but we think the spotlight's on us, but when we go into the room, no one gives a fuck because they're thinking the same thing, right?
Yes.
So whenever you're looking at a situation, you're making all these damn assumptions about how this thing is going to unfold. Make do an experiment. Try to prove yourself wrong by getting clarity. And do that in every different aspect in yourself. Because I think, when we meet somebody, I'm like, oh, this person doesn't like me. I think they look, they think I'm this, and that way. But, kind of test yourself and prove yourself wrong and actually have a conversation. And you'll know, in fact, that like, okay, this was just all the stories in my mind.
Yes. Yes. And you're absolutely right. Because sometimes I say, folks, believe it or not, sometimes you don't even remember what you ate last Friday. 9 times out of 10, these people that you think will forever and ever remember what happened, what you said, what you did, and what you look like, they don't care. They don't even remember.
Yeah.
They don't. They don't. Even sometimes I want to say embarrassing things that happen to people. Think about it for yourself. Most of the times we're really kind of like all, as far as durable memories, things having to do with us or with people like close friends or family. But we're I want to say we're the center of our own universes. So a lot of times that, like you said, that story that we got going up in our head, that everybody there will know us and remember forever and ever what happened, what we said, what we didn't, or whether they didn't like us. That's a fable. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah, and I think a key element to kind of lessening that is to not take ourselves seriously.
Yes.
Yes. Let's like laugh at yourself.
Yes. Oh my
I do
God.
laugh,
Yes.
like, stupid shit every now and then,
Yes.
and I just laugh about it. Like, you have to put, like, I put a lot of like humor in everything I do. I'm like, oh, Carol Banayos, you're fucking
Absolutely.
but yeah, just be lighthearted and just don't take yourself seriously.
Yes. It's when you and other people start taking themselves seriously, like everything is monumental, everything is and like you said, the levity kind of put things back in perspective. Like, wait a minute, okay.
I'll tell you actually a funny story about, like, something stupid I did. Like, I had I had a like in one of my meetups, like because me and a lady or one of my friends were talking about the course that we are gonna put up. It's about self love and
Hmm.
how I think topics to talk about topics that people are shying away from, like how to practice self love and like how to like have like an orgasm, that kind of stuff, right? So we're
Right,
talking
right.
about it before the meetup was happening. And the topic of that meetup was, adopting a plant-based diet. So here I am. I'm talking about, animal agriculture. It caused so much like, harmful emissions, more than the transportation system, more than this. And it's like, deforestation and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden I just said, pussy, out of nowhere. I just yelled it, and then I'm like, I put my hands in my head. I'm like, why the hell did I say that? But because I was having that conversation beforehand, and
Uh-huh.
everybody in the room just started cracked up laughing because
Right.
it's a safe environment, right?
Exactly.
But even like if it would have been me like several years ago, I probably would have ran out of the room like because of embarrassment. But I just like what, that was the most funniest shit ever. So we all
Exactly.
just laugh at it.
Exactly. And that's the
Yeah,
thing, we almost like, when you're in high school that, yeah, everything to you is like the end of the world kind of stuff.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, you're not in high school anymore.
yeah.
And I think that, especially if you talk sometimes to old people, you
Hmm.
know, they'll tell you if they had any regrets, usually it's tied around things they didn't do for fear of embarrassment,
Yeah.
fear of what other people think.
Hmm.
Not that they screwed up, and most of the time the regret is tied into what they didn't do
Yeah.
or risked because of those certain things.
Yeah.
Realizing, man, I was my own worst enemy in not doing it, whatever it was, whatever the case might. It's not that they actually failed. Sometimes I hate to say it. I mean, nobody likes to fail. Let's face it. But
Yeah.
it's almost like I tried it, I did it,
Hmm.
but I did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and
And
it
I
is,
think it's
and
like,
if you take yourself too seriously, then you're always going to be scared of, oh my God, it'll be so embarrassing. What if I look back? What if I fail? What if I screw up in front of people,
yeah.
of all
But it's
things?
almost like, you know what I mean? This too shall pass. You know what I mean? And
Yes,
it's like, again, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, I know I'm going to continually make mistakes. I'm probably going to still end up doing stupid shit, but I'm okay with it because I
yes.
like to explore. But a key point is since I've been able to allow myself to have self exploration and I allow myself to kind of, try this, try that, I actually live my life right now with no regrets at all. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's I don't know how many people can say that because the
Not
thing is
many.
I think not many at all because I think even as females we have this we are placed in a box in a sense that as a female we are only supposed to have certain roles, and if
Yes.
we are a professional, like say a coach, you have to
Hmm.
act a certain way. But the thing is that's so limiting because we are such multifaceted beings, right? And so we have to be able to uh, explore and test those different areas. So, and I think that's a big thing that people don't know about themselves. It's like, you're not just that mom.
Yes.
You're not just this accountant. You're not this teacher. That's not
Hmm.
just your role. You're so much more than that. So it's almost like look into all those other areas, your skills, your strengths, and start to explore that because we pigeonhole ourselves into this one area. But, we are kind of vast. We're like our small own little universe in the universe of things. So, we're magnificent beings, and I think people
Of
forget that.
course.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I agree. Sometimes sometimes it's society, sometimes it's our family.
Hmm.
Sometimes we get conditioned, like you said, expectations, and we kind of sometimes it's like, okay, guess what? You can be all these things,
Yeah.
and it's okay. And I do believe also, as far as happiness is concerned, we have to be more fluid. Sometimes when we
Hmm.
get into very rigid thinking, like what you're describing, oh, if I do, I gotta do, you know. And I'm gonna use the example of being a mom. God
Yeah.
knows, I am a mother of three,
Yeah.
and especially when your kids are younger, that they demand your attention and your protection, and you have, if you're a responsible parent, you realize that decisions you make affect your children.
Hmm.
But, and I'm going to talk as a woman, a lot of times we keep thinking that to be a good mom, that's got to be the 24/7 thing. And in a way it is. And I know that sometimes when you take time for yourself to be the person you were before you became a mom, it's like, what's wrong with you? You kind of feel guilty about
You're
it.
selfish. You're selfish, right? Like
Right.
that's
Like
what.
you're selfish. What are you doing? You're that. And it's like, no, because the truth is that even if we don't want to admit it, if we never pull back and take that time for ourselves to be that person we were before we became, you kind of become resentful, even with your own kids. If
Yeah.
you take the time to do whatever it is that you need for yourself, you're much better able to cope with all the things that, let's say, being a mother. It could be anything else. I'm just using that as an example. You're better at it. You don't become resentful. You deal with the shit that happens better. And also, like what you said, that you have a sense of humor about it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, this is, like you said, this too shall pass. This is, okay, maybe this is just a bad day.
Hmm.
And tomorrow it'll be better. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there that they're very rigid in their thinking that if they
Hmm.
don't fulfill that role, whatever it is, whether it was put there by the family, society, colleagues sometimes, and inside that desire, or they're out of balance, in other words.
Yeah,
As
and I think that's so important that you mentioned that as a mother and having kids and having that time for yourself because I think, just with the analogy, like when you're on a plane, what do they tell you to do? You have to put
right.
on your own life mask first before you help someone else. And I
Yes.
think what people fail to recognize, you do have to be selfish in order for you to be like a
Yes.
better mom, a wife, a sister, a daughter, or whatever. You have to take care of yourself first by giving yourself that energy. So when you take care of yourself first, then you're able to give that
Yes.
energy to other people. And it's not
Yes.
being, well, yeah, okay, you have to be a little bit selfish, but it's for the greater good. What's
Right.
wrong with you taking time out of yourself if you are taking care of the household?
Yeah.
What's an hour for yourself a day to, do what you love, go to yoga, go shopping, or whatever it
Whatever.
is you love to
Whatever.
do. Whatever you love to do, just take that time out of yourself so you can reflect and recharge because there's
Exactly.
nothing worse than having a drained battery and just living in misery, right?
And what's most important is no
Yeah,
guilt attached to it. No guilt. Because
exactly.
if you do it and you're in the back of your mind like, oh, this is so bad. Oh, I'm a bad mother. Oh, it's like, no, stop it. There's nothing wrong with it. On the contrary, you need this to be a better mother. Because let's
Exactly. And it's
put it,
not
you're
like,
in there for years or for a lifetime, really, because I can say from my own personal experience, even when your children are adults, you're never off the hook. You never
yeah.
are. Your worries are different as for them as adults, even though you don't have that same like responsibility. You
Hmm.
still worry. They're still your children, whatever, what. But what I'm saying is that you're in it for years and years and years, and if you, it's almost like when they have memories, like you can bury it, but you're not getting rid of it. And
Yeah.
when you're that lopsided responsibility is overwhelms everything in your life. And I've heard of, that's what happens. Some women, they just, what do they call? They lose it. They because
Yeah.
it's like they never learn and
Hmm.
to do what it is that you're describing.
Yeah,
That
yeah, because I think another important thing, because if you're looking at it like, oh, I'm a mother, I want to take care of my kids, and I just have to give them all of myself. I
yes,
think, the perspective that you have to look at it, kids are very intuitive, they smart,
yeah,
they can pick up on a lot of things. So what they actually really see is that, okay,
yeah,
mom is actually giving up herself in order to fulfill
yeah,
our needs. So in a sense, when I grow up, that means, if I'm in certain relationships, then I have to people please other people
right,
in the cost of my own.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Costing my own desires and needs, and that's not really healthy because it's almost like if they see mom as like, oh mom, look, she's kind of, taking that new course that she wants. She's actually, going out
mm-hmm,
with her friends more. She's doing her. It's like, oh, I can express and do what I want. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't always have to keep myself back,
yes,
to please others. And I think that that's another perspective that people need to, pay attention to, as what they
sure.
think they're doing, which is a greater good or good for the family, may actually be causing harm. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I consider I was very lucky. I grew up in a very good family in the sense of they gave me what I think most children crave, which is stability, love, you know, protection from, you know, I was secure. In other words, I had a family that protected me and took care of me. And by the way, it has nothing to do with money. And I think about it because sometimes we think that children to be happy, they have to be the center of attention and both parents have to be hovering over them. And I think that's BS. Because I remember I was part of my family and I knew that I was going to have enough to eat and that I had rules and that I went to school and I was taken care of and I wasn't exposed to things that were meant for adults. In other words, I knew that adults protected me, the adults in my family, my mother and everyone protected me from stuff, whether it was physical danger or I wasn't exposed to things that weren't age appropriate for me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what most human beings as children need when they grow up. I didn't have my mother there 24/7. Are you okay? What do you want, baby? Yeah. It's like my mom, you know, she was working, she was doing anything, but I knew she was there, you know, and I knew my family was around. And I think that, and I had my place in that family dynamic, whatever. And I think that's what sometimes we overdo it also. That's with children as far as that later on, it bites parents in the butt because then you have a teenager, an adolescent, a teenager, a young adult who's thinking, why aren't you doing this for me, Mom?
Yeah, and that creates a larger problem because they go out into the workforce and the world being like entitled, you know, and it's like this actually should be given to me because everything in my life as growing up, my parents gave to me, so I need this, just hand it over in a silver platter. But it doesn't work that way. And I think, you know, just describing how you were brought up, that's great because you had boundaries, but you were still able and free to roam. You weren't being kind of you know, suffocated, basically.
No. You know, I had, you know, like I said, I had my boundaries and I had things that I couldn't do and rules. And despite how children complain, they all need it and they love it and they want it because they understand that is their role within the family. This is part of the protection that that comes with it. And I mean, I don't know if you've run across clients like this yet who they have a moment of reality, like you said, when they go out into the world, whether it's college or they move away from home, and then the real world doesn't deal with them the way mom and dad used to, and they're like, huh? What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's this, that protection, right? They think they're protecting, but they're handicapping their kids, right? So I run across that a lot of times, whether it's like kind of clients or whether, you know, the people, you know, I meet, because I think, you know, there's a difference between people being responsible to and for you. So, I mean, a lot of the time we feel that other people are responsible for our success and failure, but people need to understand your life and how it turns out. You're the only one that are responsible for it. No one else. You cannot blame nobody, you know?
And a lot of people have a hard time with that.
Yeah, but, you know, I'm sorry to burst your fucking bubble, people.
Yes, exactly. And it is. That's a hard one. That is...
Life it will turn out and you're the one that's only responsible. You can't blame other people. You want your life like at X, Y, and Z, then you're the one that's responsible to get it as X, Y, and Z. Not your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, you know what I mean, the government or anything like that. Only you.
And that's, you know what, that's a hard one because the blame game, which is, and sometimes, especially, you know, regardless, sometimes, and don't get me wrong, I know some people sometimes have had tough beginnings in life. For whatever reason, things happen, their family of origin was toxic, whatever, it's everybody's thing. And then you get to the point that you ask yourself, so what is your story going to be?
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, you're the one that's going to make that story happen one way or the other.
Exactly.
Now, are you going to be like what you described? I'm going to blame everything and everybody under the sun. You know, tough beginnings, family that wasn't the best, or circumstances, or tough breaks, things that happen to people, some worse than others. And that's going to set the tone of the rest of your life for not getting, you know, what I wanted, or I wasn't as beautiful, as smart, as lucky, as what else? All the reasons that we give for just saying, forget it, I'm not going to really try. And you've made a very good point, Carol, that ultimately it is our responsibility. It is.
It is.
Regardless of, and it's a tough one. It is.
It
especially
is
when you
it's
screw
a
up.
really tough pill to swallow, but at the end of the day, like I have discussions with like my business partner and everything, and then and another one of our mentors is like, you come in this life alone, you're born as a
Hmm.
baby alone, and then when you die alone in your casket or whatever. So when you know that, then it's like, I am the one responsible for my successes and failures, and you know what I mean, and take ownership of that. No one wants to
Yes.
take ownership of their shit. And it's like, you know what? If you, because people always want to be the victim, right?
Oh, yeah.
But but don't be a victim. Be a victor of your circumstance. Flip the
Yes.
script on it. You don't need to be a victim. And I think when people are in a victim mode, I think another, like, you know what I mean, smack across the fucking faces, you know, people like being in misery because they like the attention that they
Oh,
get.
sure. Unfortunately,
Right?
yes.
Well,
Yes.
misery loves company. So it's like, oh my God,
Yes.
I went through all this crazy shit. I want you to feel sorry for me because that makes me feel
Yes.
better. And it's like, come on, give me a fucking break. Really, that's not resourceful. And I think when you kind of compare a lot of people that have been through so many tragedies
Hmm.
in life, because
Yes.
I look at my own life in general, like it's not just like near death, like in all different aspects, like death, like relationship, like how my family, like career, and like having to be like arrested and charged for things you know what I mean. There's so much bullshit that I went through, but then I have a choice how I want to perceive that
Yes.
situation. Shakespeare says that there's nothing either good or bad but thinking that makes it so. So if you
Exactly.
know that if you know that analogy, then it's almost like, is this really good or bad? You know what I mean? The
Depends
choice
on
is
how you want to interpret it.
exactly. So your own interpretation, your own perspective, and I think no matter what experiences you have, good or bad, I think just as long as you're able to extract a lesson, then
Hmm.
nothing is bad. Because that,
Right.
again, that lesson is growth, right? And it prepares you for another situation or hardship that comes in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
And you made a, and I hate to say it, but lately especially, there's the what I want to call the victim circuit.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there are times where if you have been victimized,
Yeah.
whatever, there is a moment. Absolutely. I'm not taking that away from, but even then, it's you cannot be forever the victim. In other words,
Exactly.
there comes a point where, what depending on what the situation was, of course, that okay, that come then you got to move on. But some people, like you said, always want to be on that victim track for the
Hmm.
sympathy. Plus, let's face it, when somebody's identified as a victim, you expect less of them. You got
Hmm.
to cut them a break because they're victims.
Hmm.
And that, again, is when you get to the point that you say enough of this. And in other words, this glorifying sometimes of victimhood, I think, is doing a big disservice to society
Yeah.
because the truth is the last thing you want to be is a victim. Sometimes it
Exactly.
happens. There's things that are out of your control that you find yourself there. But in truth, that is really the last thing you want to be. And once you're there, you want to do everything possible within your power to get out of it,
Yeah.
out of that state of mind, physical, whatever, and move towards in a gradual process. Because I'm not going to say it's not like a light switch that you wake up and then you go, I'm all good now. But at least you
Hmm.
start going in that direction little by little, day by day, doing whatever it takes, whatever the situation was, to not be the victim or not to feel victimized
Yeah.
anymore. But
Yeah. I think another important aspect to mention is that, you know, we have so many different emotions that we go through, good ones and bad ones. Like, when we do feel like a victim or we feel sad,
sure,
anxiety and pain and all this other stuff, there's nothing wrong with feeling in
sure,
those emotions, but just
yeah,
don't stay in them. All right.
right.
You know what I mean?
What is
Like,
it when you have what is it when the going gets tough? The tough go shopping.
yeah,
So okay, go shopping.
yeah.
This is the thing. It's not like you like, huh, like all right, like okay, that's fine. There's moments absolutely when you feel sorry for yourself and you have your little pity party. And don't get me wrong. There are things sometimes. There's minor stuff,
Hmm.
like you said, because we take things too seriously. Other times it's major things
Hmm.
that there is no way to escape it except to endure it, whatever
Hmm.
it might be.
Yeah.
Um, but there's always that thing of the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables there,
Hmm.
but absolutely yes, that there's a point in time where you got to, like we were talking about earlier, you got to be kind to yourself also, depending what the
Exactly.
circumstances are. But then there's comes a point where, let's face it, you're the only one inside of your skin and in your head where you got to
Yeah.
tell yourself, okay, that's it. We got to start moving in another direction now. A little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And like you said, sometimes you enlist the help of whether it's a coach or a psychologist or a
Hmm.
good friend.
Yeah, and I think even maybe sometimes it's just that, just even having a discussion with someone, you know what I
Yes.
mean? I think it's just the people just want to be heard and know
Hmm.
that they're not alone. Because I think I
Yes.
remember when I used to work in the government, there was this guy who was teaching a course, and he said that, never underestimate what a smile and hello can do for an
Yes.
individual. That can have the potential to turn the whole life around, because he said, he was walking down the street one day and they looked at somebody and smiled and said, "How are you?" And that had like the
Yes.
most profound impact on that person's life, because he felt alone and he was contemplating killing himself.
Hmm.
But he's like, "Oh my God, I've been acknowledged. People actually
Yes.
acknowledged me." So that kind of flipped the script on his thinking, and then that stopped him from doing what he was going to do, right?
Exactly.
So just like reach out and talk to someone who actually cares. And I think that's another thing too, where people have to be mindful of like the company they keep.
Oh,
So make sure
yes.
the company you keep,
Oh,
right,
yes.
are the ones that kind of pull you to a higher trajectory, a higher height, rather than
Yes.
pull you down. And I think a lot of time people are like, okay, you have to cut out people, but people rarely have the balls to do that. But the
Hmm.
thing is, it's like the more and more you're sensitive and you're intuitive and all this other stuff, you know that people can drain your energy.
Sure.
And if you keep these negative people in your life, then
Yes.
won't allow for the good to come in. So look at it as like, hey, these people are draining my energy. I'm not kind of getting, I'm just like, I feel like shit whenever I'm around them. So
Yeah.
that is a good like telling point. I feel like shit. I feel drained. You know what? I
Hmm.
have to have, self empowerment. I have, and self respect really to cut these people out of my life. You know?
Right. And it
Yeah.
takes, and that also takes, like what you described, what's called that self-analysis,
Yeah.
where it's like all of a sudden, what, you're dreading the phone call from that friend,
Yeah.
because every time you speak to them or every time you hang out with that person,
Hmm.
you feel like you said at the end of the day, you're like, I feel depressed. I feel bad. I feel horrible. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, their problems are my problems and they unload it on me. And, you know, and I mean, that's what friends are for. You're there to help each other. But when this person becomes like a psychic vampire
Yes, exactly.
and drains all the happiness that you have,
Hmm.
because, of course, they're the most important thing. It takes a lot sometimes to have that moment of truth and say, I got to stop hanging out with this person. I really do.
Exactly. You
And
gotta
yeah,
grow a pair, right? Really.
right. And you might have an uncomfortable moment where
Yeah.
you might even tell that person or not take their call as often until they
Mm.
finally ask what's wrong. And you tell them, hey, I'm sorry, but I can't be around you that much. Some people are really
Yeah.
scared of having that conversation.
But it's almost you have to have that conversation, is because like that we talked about earlier, that people pleasing mentality
Yes,
is that everybody else likes you but yourself. So are you
exactly.
do you want to keep on like putting yourself on the back burner? No. So it's almost like, yeah, if you really do, we talked about earlier again to tie in that whole like abundance and
Hmm.
letting things come into your life. How are you are kind of um, not aligned. So you're saying you want good in your life, but you still are having all these kind of bad negative energies. So you're not letting
Right.
that flow come into your life. So, cut the bullshit out so you can allow for the good to come in. I know it's not an easy thing to do, and I've
It's not.
struggled with it a lot. But at the same time, I have to look at my own sanity, what makes me happy, and I have to allow for more good to come in. And to be honest, like I cut all the weeds out of my life. I don't have any
Yeah.
of that these people in my life anymore, because I respect myself enough to not let that kind of hinder me. Because the thing is, another thing that people need to realize is like, you get what you tolerate. So if you
Yes.
tolerate a lot of people treating you like shit, then you're going to invite more people in that treat you the same way. So
Right.
until you're able to make that decision, then you're going to keep on getting that.
Well, and some people fall into that, the rescuer
Yeah,
they want to rescue everything and everybody.
yeah,
And don't get me wrong, I believe in helping others,
Yeah.
but they don't know. Their boundaries are shot. They
Hmm.
sometimes, even like you, exactly like what you said earlier, they're warning, their internal voice is telling them, hey, you shouldn't hang out with this person, or don't
Yeah.
befriend this person, or stay away from this person. But they don't listen to that inner voice, that instinct,
Mm.
because they got to rescue everybody. They feel sorry for
Yeah.
them. And then, of course, maybe weeks or months down the road, then they're in a situation, in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or whatever, where they're like, oh my God, what is this? And of course, they're very unhappy and the world's turned upside down. And let's face it, you can't rescue everybody. You shouldn't rescue everybody
Yeah.
because,
You should. We're not all Mother Teresa. You know what I mean?
and what's the
Yeah.
worst that they could say? You're being selfish? Okay.
So what?
And so
Yeah.
I'm selfish. What are you going to do about it?
Because I think too, it's almost like when you want something more in your life and more of
Yes.
yourself, you know what I mean? That's gonna really shock a lot of people. Because when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going up, you know what I mean? Once you raise the bar, you lose the weak.
Yes.
You lower the bar, you lose the strong, right? So again, if you're meant to go up here, you're gonna lose people, and you just have to realize people serve a purpose and a time period in your life for
Yes, they
as a
do.
lesson, and you have to be okay with that.
Well, I have a feeling that some, and like I said, that comes to, I guess what it boils down to is the boundaries that you hold for yourself
Hmm.
as far as to protect your happiness, to protect yourself.
Hmm.
And there's a very important life lesson that a lot of people sometimes fail. Self-preservation is very important. And when I
Hmm.
mean self-preservation, I'm not only talking of danger, as in your life.
Hmm.
Self-preservation also means your psychological, your
Hmm.
emotional, your spiritual protection,
Hmm.
preservation of yourself. Um, where there's times, scenarios, certain people that you just got to say, I'm sorry, I can't, no,
Hmm.
and then that's it. And that's the
Yeah.
best you can do. And yeah, you might, unfortunately, we're conditioned, like you said, especially women. I'm not going to say only, but
Yeah.
especially women, of feeling guilty or why we didn't do anything to help that person.
Hmm. Because I think even, too, I look at it another perspective. It's almost like, and me saying no to that person, maybe that's that no that they needed to change too,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So it's almost like, you have to look at it as, are you part of the problem or the solution? And most of the
Yes,
time, I think, we may be part of the problem if we're not willing to be first honest and like telling people how we feel, and then second to, cut people off. And I
yeah,
think that's another thing that people are
yes,
so scared to be honest, and
yeah.
it's funny though because like a lot of the time some of my friends is like, okay, if you want a like honest opinion, you should ask Carol because I
There you go.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
exactly.
at times when they call me, they're like, oh, Carol, what do you think about this? I'm like, actually, I don't like it. I actually think you need to change this or whatever. And then they start like this argument, but I'm like, hey, you wanted like advice,
Right,
and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm just going to be honest. And
right,
some people don't like it.
right. It's like, did you want honesty? I mean,
Yeah.
it's all in the delivery. Don't get me wrong. There's no need to be cruel, on the contrary, or humiliating or anything. But if you want honest feedback, you
Hmm.
tell them. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's
Yeah.
not.
And I think
Now, if
that
you want
that's
me
the
to
thing.
just to spoon feed you what you want to hear, that's different, though.
Yeah. And I guess that saying of, people want to, you know, uh, people, when they hear things, they want to hear what they want to hear rather
Sure,
than what they need to hear.
sure,
So it's almost like,
exactly,
yeah. Hmm.
exactly. And I guess also, I guess that's when the thing as far as being a coach, like you said, or a
Hmm.
mentor, that's another thing where this person tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear,
Yeah.
even
It's
if
a
it
tough
makes you
cookie.
mad.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is, like, I think because I've been so through so much and I'm so honest with myself, with what I went through, then I think it comes as, you know what I mean? Like, she kind of knows what it is to kind of go through this stuff and to tell it what it is. Because I think when they come in the mindset, it's like you know, we're here to help. So we're not here to kind of purposely trying to hurt your feelings, but it's almost like if you want the truth, we're going to give it to you.
Right.
No sugar coating anything. Yeah.
Well, you know what? And believe it or not, let's say even when it comes to friends, that is the
Mm.
good friend. That is the
Yeah,
good true friend. The one that
exactly.
tells you what they maybe you don't want to hear.
Hmm.
It risks um, you you getting mad at them.
Hmm.
Um, that's really sometimes the sign of a true friend. And by this, I'm not talking about somebody that puts you down all the time. I'm talking about somebody
Yeah.
that when you're doing something wrong or doing something that they think is not right for you, that they tell you, "Hey, I don't think
Hmm.
that's a good idea."
Exactly.
And so that's very unappreciated nowadays.
Yeah, because it's almost like, because I think, a lot of the time people are like, their ego gets hurt. You know what I
Yes,
mean? It's like, how dare you say this to me? But it's almost
right.
like, I'm here to help. You know what I mean? But when we practice love, and I think we talked about it earlier, you mentioned
Hmm.
you have to give tough love sometimes,
Yes, of
you
course.
know? And that's for your own realization, your own evolution of your consciousness. You have to be open enough to hear it. Because as much as I am willing to give it, I'm open to receiving it too. To be, Carol, like, I think that you approached that was a bit too harsh or whatever, or maybe your perspective is, maybe too a little bit too rigid. But the thing is, I'm open because I'm willing to learn and improve. Because we are naturally a work in progress. I never want to be perfect, because perfection to me is like, you might as well be dead. You don't, because you're not learning and
Yeah,
growing. I,
exactly.
I'm
It's like
I'm perfectly imperfect, and I want to
absolutely.
continually grow. Yeah,
It's the perfection of imperfection. And the truth is,
yes,
a lot of friends will say, "Well, you're supposed to support me." And sometimes that is support. Support doesn't
exactly.
mean telling you, everything is great. Sometimes support is telling you, "Hey, I
Yeah,
I don't think that's right for you." And
yes,
after a while, if you're honest, you know which of your friends come from a good place when they tell you stuff like that.
yeah,
And then, it takes off from there. But anyway, Carol, I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. It has been wonderful to speak to you. It has been
yeah,
great, as a matter of fact. And I want to
yeah.
know, are you planning any new books? I know, like, let me ask you, because I know that your website, you have more than one website. What's for the people that listening to this on podcast? What's the website where you can be reached at? I'm sorry,
They
the
can,
go ahead.
yeah, they can connect with me on Facebook. At
Mm-hmm.
Carol Banayos. They can also go to my website, www.carolbanayos.com, and they can email me at cb@carolbanayos.com as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you
Okay.
want to kind of know, certain things that I'm into, or, with the movement, they can go to Meetup and type in the Wake the Fuck Up movement to kind of get more
Perfect.
information on that. And I will have some upcoming books coming. I'm not going to reveal the title yet. It's going to come out soon, but once
Okay.
I do, I'll let you know.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I know. The
Yeah.
creative
But I,
process.
yeah. Yeah, but I also want to kind of thank you for taking the time and
No, on
having
the
interest
contrary.
to have a discussion with me, and taking time
It
out of your
has
busy
been
schedule. Yeah,
my pleasure. On the contrary, it has been totally, totally my pleasure. And I want to
yeah.
wish you the best of luck in all your projects.
Yes. Thank you as well, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Absolutely, darling. Take care.
Thank you. Much love.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Much love. So, guys, see, isn't it great to bring somebody in that's a little bit different than some of the guests that I bring on? Everybody thinks of the paranormal as always ghosts and ghoulies and long-leggedy beasties. Not all the time. Okay. The reason why I brought Carol on, because I was, she did write that book and she had those near-death experiences, and hopefully, believe it or not, she went through these things in her life, and hopefully we don't have to go through things like that to make a change in our life when we really need it. And I think everybody comes to those type of crossroads more than once in their lifetime for different reasons in different aspects of their life. And the reason why because if you listen to Carol's story, it's more than just a motivational coaching thing. There's a layer of the metaphysical there. Okay, almost like there was things going on in her life, like she was saying that despite the appearance of what was going on in her life, apparently there were things going on underneath the surface or on a metaphysical level that she wasn't paying attention to. And unfortunately, it was only after certain events that she came to this realization about what she really wanted, what was in her heart, what she was really meant to do. Some people call it a purpose in life, which, by the way, a lot of people think, oh, when I discover my purpose in life, that's it. Folks, that's a big illusion. That is. We have several purposes in life. You know, you have a purpose in life up to a certain point, and then it'll change, and you got to change with it. Okay? Because sometimes, and it's not that you made the wrong choice, but we change. We're fluid. What was right for you maybe when you were a teenager or in your 20s, then it changes, and you got to listen to yourself, and maybe you change what you do. Uh, we're always under a state of evolution as human beings, and I think sometimes people fail to recognize that about ourselves, and they think that once they get the purpose in life, that's it. I don't have to go searching for anything else, and I'll be done, and this is what I'll do for the ever and ever. Amen. And maybe for some people it is. I'm not saying no, but there's a lot of things about us as human beings that changes over time. And it doesn't mean that if what you did maybe for 20 or 30 years, you stop doing it or you switch it around or you change it, that doesn't mean you were wrong. It just means that you're now maybe are going in another direction, or you need something else that really makes your heart happy, whatever it might be. And hopefully, like I said, the universe doesn't have to reach out to you in such a harsh way to make you pay attention, to say you are not listening to yourself, or there's things going on in you that you are trying to quiet down by getting this, studying this area, or getting this job, whether it's the prestige, whether it's the money that's attached to a job, or, if you have a certain lifestyle, then everybody will look at you and go, wow, that person is successful, that person is happy. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big believer in human potential. I'm a big believer that we should strive to obtain certain things that make us happy, complete, whether it's knowledge, material things up to a certain point. Absolutely, because I think that humans striving to obtain certain things, it's good for us. And there's going to be people that are better than you, and there's people that are going to be worse than you, which, by the way, that's a whole different show, as in stop the comparison crap. But anyway, I think that all human beings, what they want is to be happy. And despite a lot of the conditioning that we get from society, and like what I was talking about with, television and commercials and advertising and all these different companies wanting to make money off us humans, in reality, we need much, much less to be happy than what we think. And by this, like I've said before, I don't mean happy like you run around going, ha 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 ha. Okay, happiness is in contentment, points of high happiness, because it's when you have that ability that when something happens, a problem, that there's happiness at the other end of this. I can cope with this, I can handle it, and I'll get through it somehow, depending on what it is. Some problems obviously are more serious than others. But when you experience happiness, when you know what happiness is like, is in contentment, and you realize this is what I need to make me happy, and contrary to what everybody's telling me that I need to have this and buy that and this and that, no. I don't know. When we look back through our lives, we'll see that, man, it wasn't that complicated. It really wasn't that complicated to be happy, to look forward to each day, even if maybe bad things sometimes happen and problems come up. In other words, that you love life. Yes, you love life with all its imperfection, and you come to the understanding that life is messy. Yes, it's messy, and it'll be messier sometimes than others. And that's how we learn, how we grow, how we flex our human muscles, in the sense of we handle things and we tackle things, and Sometimes it turns out great, sometimes it doesn't. We learn from past mistakes. And like I said, I think that the best, happiest humans are the ones that engage in life and determine what is going to be my story, despite adverse beginnings or circumstances or situations that we've been in. You are the author of your story. And sometimes it's very tough, and it's a day-to-day thing sometimes to make that decision that this is going to be my story, the way I want it to be. And I'm going to do what I need to do to have that story again. Whether you have to practice a lot at something, or you have to study, or you have to... could play out in so many variables depending on what it is that you want that makes you happy. Yeah, I think we're simpler creatures, despite what we're being told. We're complex in many ways, but in other ways we're also very simple. Simpler than we're led to believe when it comes to the happiness component. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming and sharing this time with me. Please don't forget to look me up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I live stream there. I've got a lot of fantastic guests coming on. My true believers, don't forget to subscribe, and also go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com. Go to Submit Your Story tab, and I want to hear about your true experiences, whatever they might be. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a ghost story. It could be something metaphysical, absolutely metaphysical. I'm truly interested in that. Mystical experiences. You know, a lot of people think that the paranormal is only UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts. Not necessarily. There's a lot of esoteric and metaphysical things that fall into what I consider part of the paranormal field. Mystical experiences, things that happen to us that we might want to dismiss as coincidence, but deep in our heart we know that it's not. I want to hear about that. So again, guys, thanks. Thank you so much. You're all wonderful, and I look forward to bringing a lot of fantastic shows for us all to enjoy. Take care.